Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Ken Konkin, CEO and President of TUDOR Gold Corp, located in the heart of the Golden Triangle with the flagship property, the Treaty Creek gold, copper, and silver systems. We have been a company for about a handful of years and recently had great success with rolling out an initial resource of almost 20 million ounces, 19.41 million ounces of 0.74 gold, with another 7.9 million ounces hanging out there in the inferred categories.
Ken, good to have you on board. Actually been wanting to speak to you since 2019 when we were sort of introduced to the company by some fund managers in London. Look, it hasn't been a pretty ride for the last 2 years or so. You may have nearly 20 million ounces, but people don't seem to like the story. What's going on?
Well, I think everybody has a reason to sell. I wish I knew half of them, but honestly, it's been a systemic slide in the industry, and sometimes I feel like a kid coming to a landslide with a wheelbarrow, trying to bail us out. But I've seen this before. 2000 with Silver Standard, 2008, we put our heads down and drilled through those things, and we are poised to come out the back end of a very harsh environment. I think we are set up to basically come out with a new resource. Our technical team is dialed in exactly what we need to make, I believe, a robust, viable, large gold, silver, copper producer in Canada.
But there's got to be something to this. It's large, but it's low grade. Do people not like the low grade component? Are they worried about the metallurgy? Are they worried about recovery rates? I mean, what's going on back there?
Well, I think at this point, that's all those disciplines have to be addressed, absolutely. But the first and foremost thing, let's take us back to square one. How many people know who Tudor Gold is? Not very many. I mean, I still come across people who do not know who Pretium is. So something's happened in the industry where you don't have that mechanism of dissemination of information to everyone. I mean, everybody's on the web, everybody's on the net, doing whatever. But the old style promoters and brokers, tours, those have ended. So for me, the absolute quintessential aspect is, number one, find the end of the resource first. Let's just keep going. And some people may have needed money. I know a personal case of a good friend of mine that got wiped out in a hurricane. He is in dire straits. He had to sell. He was a key investor. So I can't blame people for taking money when they have to take money. It is a systemic slide where, like I say, I'm bringing my wheelbarrow. We'll do our best, and I'll keep drilling. But you're right. Those disciplines are going forward. The First Nations, we're well signed with those guys. Great groups, so we're working closely with them, and we'll continue to. I think our location access, people don't like it's a fly-to job, but they don't realize we actually drive to it. We drive to the job and bring all our drills on the back of snowcats. I brought the same snowcats that I bought for Pretium back in the day in 2010 and 9, and I've got the same equipment back, part of the same team. Technical team. So we're going forward with metallurgical tests. There's never been tests on our superstar domains. We've got a bunch of new data coming out each and every press release.
Right. Okay. And I'm going to get onto the slightly higher grade stuff that you're starting to find now, but I've got to stick with this point about each. People have lots of different pressures to sell, and there's like you kind of got a little ski run there, going down. And all precious metal companies are going through this, but yours started, a couple of years ago, and I'm trying to wonder, what does a company like yours need to do to kind of gain that trust or get that momentum, get that blue sky component going again? Because you have been banging out sort of these sort of sub 1 gram per ton mark for some time. You are drilling the heck out of this. You've raised some money recently, and we'll talk about that in a second too. But you're already super big, but how are you going to prove to people that you can actually mine this economically at some point?
That is the $24 million question that we need probably going forward for next year to absolutely find the end of when you say big, how big is big? That's the first question. And the next one is, you're right. So we've sat down with our team of engineers, reverse engineers, what would work here, because there's a variety of grades here. There are mines within mines. In the past, we used to just want to go out and find a global number, and our global resource, our cutoffs were not traditional cutoffs. just the open pit cut off with standard at a 0.3. However, everything out of pit or underground sublevel block cave, we didn't use a 0.35 cutoff. We use a 0.46. So we've taken a much more conservative hardline approach to this deposit, because every time you go forward, I know what's coming. You have to claw back. There's going to be the engineers say, no, can't do this. No, this is going to be cost this. You're going to be clawing stuff back. So we've been working at a feverish pitch to try and find the northwestern end of this of the aspect of this deposit. To our delight, we've been seeing grades that are doubling our global resource averages across the board. Not only gold, but silver and gold too. So we're getting what I believe to be closer to the center of the system, into the pile, if you will, the metallurgical center. So all these drill holes that we're now drilling and we still have on the table currently are optically looking very good. And the big takeaway is, you're right, this has got a great copper component to it. So now we're seeing gold companies that would like to visit us and specifically state they want to look at the gold aspect of it, or copper aspect, pardon me.
Right, but are there two projects going on here? Because you kind of got this near 20 million ounces of the low grade stuff. You're starting to see this higher grades, almost polymetallic in a way. You get there's a lot of additional metals in there. Is that going to be a more interesting story for the market in a moment like this? Do you park what you've been doing to date as a result, or can these be seen as as one whole project?
That's a good way of actually. That's a great question, because I think we've got something for everyone. And I know that the idea of the old saying that grade is king. Well, to a degree, it is. I mean, it comes with this whole host of problems and issues. For me, I think it's continue finding the end of the system and then identify what will work. Will it be a medium grade within the low grade envelope? Will it be a higher grade sub-level block cave? Will it be possibly long holing or wide stope approach, right? We don't know until we find the end of it. But the one thing of certainty is we have never targeted high grade, and yet we're seeing the serendipitous, or the frequency of that occurrence go from about every 10 drill holes out of 49 for approximately 20% episode of seeing visible gold to almost 100%. We're at 80% occurrence in the northeast aspect. This is a large piece of real estate, 500 meter step out, and we hit it out of the park. I thought for sure we'd come to the end of the system, but no, we're still going. And next year we'll be doing yet another step out. So I know the shareholders want to see us come out with a PEA. I know we know that. We know we have to deal with the disciplines of the geometry of the workings underground, the geometry of the pit wall stability, which means geotech drilling. We have saved all our bullets for drilling. We need to put numbers on the board. In my mind, that's key here. If you can't put the numbers on the board, that's the first part of a deposit. It's got to be there. If it's not there, you have to demonstrate. The second part, the technical team to do it, and the third is the money. So how do you approach that? I mean, it's chicken and egg for us, but we're going to go forward and just keep drilling and coming up with the best results that sooner or later we will find the end of Goldstorm.
No, but that comes to the heart of my question though. It's like, you put the runs on the board, the scores on the board. It's 19.4 million ounces. You've done that, but it doesn't seem to kind of meet the expectations, or it doesn't feel like it's sort of up to scratch with what people think can be mined. So you've got a story to tell, which is like, this can be mined. This can be mined economically, moreover. And that may have a value on its own. The numbers you're starting to put out, and there's some, like, obviously some good, much higher grades, and there's some super high grades in there, albeit over much narrow widths, and it's more like veining that you're finding. But that may be a separate story. So how do you? Because I'm not buying we need to put scores on the board, because you got a big project there. It's what do you feel that you're needing to do now that you haven't been able to do before?
Okay, I'll explain.
Which is going to get people on board.
Simple thing that'll work in your head. Pretend you're going to a buffet. You come up to the table. You've got this beautiful baron of beef. We started off at the shank end at the bone end. We've been putting out results on the bone end with the sinew and the dilution of the co-magmatic dikes. We've put out the 0.74 number. We haven't put out the +1 a gram number. That's what we're after. Once you get into the Barren of Beef, where every cut now is pure meat, it's richer, it's juicier, it's tastier. You're not having to deal with all that dilution of co-magmatic, which is what occurs in the Southwest. We just, when given lemons, you make lemonade, right? Well, we did the best we could. In my opinion, I would have loved to have waited until we got the entire resource drilled off, and we could have said, we're trading out those 0.3s for 0.8s. Let's just trade off these things and let's put out a more robust resource off the get-go. Wouldn't that have been a wonderful thing to have done? We didn't. We put out an initial resource, which was still a phenomenal resource, just to show people, demonstrate this thing is a world-class beast that we don't have the end of at all. But the true aspect of it, the best part is the part we're into now. No way we're going to stop for various reasons. One, we can't even pull a composite. Why? Because the metallurgy is changing greatly between the CS600. This beautiful copper stream 600 used to be just chalcopyrite. Now you're seeing boronite at its depth. Boronite recovers much more rapidly, responds more rapidly on any type of a flotation system. So we haven't even pulled composites because every time we drill a hole, there's a character change in the system of the domain within the domain, because these are 200-meter offsets to a 200-meter hole. So we're not coming in 25-meter spacing on these things. We're stepping out 250 meters and gaining. Now, this is all still struggling to get drill indicated on this thing, right? So we want to get this all M&I. Once we get M&I, that will apply to your PEA, right? So we need to get the best of the Barren of Beef. So we can just cut off the shank bone and say, let's trade out those ounces of 0.3s and 0.4s and 0.5s, right? And gold equivalents, right? So we can toss that and replace them all with the upgrade, the new, better and improved model of 1.5s, 1.6s.
Yeah, I get it. What I'm trying to get from you is a picture of how this works. How does this become a mine? Because you've spent money drilling a lot of holes on something that you want to trade out, right? So are you saying to shareholders, look, we need to trade that out and we're probably going to have to write that off because we've got some good juicy meat over here. And that is where the money's actually going to be. The grades are awesome. We are starting to understand a little bit more about how the ore body's working, and we've got a better sense of how we could mine this thing in our heads. You're going to need to prove that out with your economic studies and models and so forth. But are we working to a point where we're going to throw out what we've been spending money on previously?
No, you have to understand one thing. You go from known to unknown. How would I have known we had something laying there at 1,479.5 meters of 1.12 grams when we were struggling just to make 300 meters of that? How would I have known from going from known to unknown? You must know from what you have on surface that daylight's right in front of us. That's 1 gram, then gets diluted by co-magmatic dikes and sills, which is fine. We can deal with that. Then drops into a beautiful CS600 system that wasn't known to us before. In fact, we stopped holes when we said, well, we're here for gold, not copper, and incorrectly, and said because we didn't have the money. We had like $1.5 million. That's it. That's all we had. And we were here to find gold. Everybody was saying, let's get gold. 2018 was the end of a gold hit. And we said, we're here to get gold, not so much copper. Then now it's like, are you kidding me? We're going back realigning on holes and picking up our superstar 0.8 over 400 meters of copper. That is almost 50-50 in value with gold. And now that gold used to be a 0.3 is now hanging in there at 0.9, just gold alone. Add on a 0.3 copper. One of the composites, that 1.5 kilometer composite I mentioned to you, has a 0.27 component copper. There is no copper in the top half of it. It's all in the bottom 732 meters. That thing is over 0.5%. It's a 0.5% copper. It's a copper mine. Our engineers looked at us, geez, Ken, beautiful copper mine. It's got great grades. Let's just take the CS600 and get the gold and see what comes with it. And that's possibly part of the goal. In between that the two gold horizons that we've got, the upper 300 horizon, the lower DS5, is this copper stream, dead center. And it's a beautiful, consistent thing. And I think if any word should describe a large mineable deposit, it has to be consistency. If you don't have consistency in grade, you are in trouble because you're back to your grade control issue. This thing is up there with consistency. We had some of the big boys come through, they look at it, they go, can this be right? Look how consistent this is. And not just that, I can predict where the core of the highest grade of the domain will be within 5 meters of drilling a kilometer hole, 10 meters. We'll see that on our, and these sections are, again, not anywhere near 100 meters or 150, 200 meters apart. And yet we can systematically project where these domains are, the lower grade envelope, but within it, the higher grade core. So when you see the consistency, the size to make a robust set of economics, this is still discovery. This is only year 3. You need 600 drill holes, my friend. We're at 162 right now. Can you imagine what I've done? I sat down with a group of serious explorationists. I said, all this in 3 years, what do you think? Are we doing okay? They couldn't believe it, could not believe it. So yes, known to unknown, step out. Had we done it the other way, it would have been kind of moronic because you're sitting on the outcrop of this thing exposed and seeing the plunge of this thing kind of turn out to be closer to the magmatic source of all the metal. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It's a phenomenal story, but it's just one of 4. There's 3 other targets here. It's
okay. Let's get this, Ken, because I think people have had a super run of it with you, made a lot of money, and it's been downhill ever since, right? So what I'm starting to build up is that you got a sense of what you think is there, and that the grades are getting better, and you feel that they can get even better, and you're moving to something that you want. So unknown to known, great. How do you go about putting this together? You've raised, I think $7.75 million recently on private placement. Eric Sprott taking part in this, which is interesting because he's been shying away or moving away from some of his bets he placed in 2020. So he obviously likes what he sees. What do you do with that to continue this story of getting further to the meat, as it were, of the conversation? Because now's not time to raise a lot of capital, so I can understand why it's that sort of amount. But what's it going to allow you to do to be able to maybe push that share price, to be able to go and raise cheaper capital going down the line?
Right. I mean, obviously, nobody likes to try and do a raise at this level. We just had a board of directors meeting, and one of our directors comes up with, well, even if you took out 20 million, that's a dilution of 10%. And I said, well, you can only afford that 2 or 3 times. So my goal is, yes, go forward, take only the money we needed. That was my first question when someone asked me, we're at 1 million, said, well, if I gave you 10 million, would you take it? I said, no, of course not. I have to see the first 1.5 million hit to see the next 3 million hits, then the next 10 million hits. So it goes exponentially. So simply said, yes, our raises were traditionally small. We only did what we needed to get to where we were at a stage of 2 raises per year in the flow through season, typically in the Q1 and typically near end of Q2, beginning Q3 kind of thing, right? So this year was a disaster. We hit a hailstorm of selling in the middle of it. So make a long story short, yes, we brought on technical advisors, Joe Ofsnick, ex-president of Pratium, Ken McNaughton, ex-VP exploration for Silver Standard Pratium, Stephen Quinn, phenomenal success in the industry of dealing with very difficult projects. I've had discussions with other past presidents of mines in Canada that currently are the biggest producers. Detour is a good example where their actually head grades have gone from about 1 gram down to under 1 gram. I was cautioned by a great geological mine that be careful for being under 1 gram. Be very careful. And that mine is currently producing at a head grade of 0.89. So when we compare ourselves or stack our numbers up at the early years compared to other competitors, we're mopping the court with them. We're crushing them. If you look at our numbers and what we have, and you look at the details, and really the absolute beauty of the story is in the details. When you take away these 1.5 kilometers of 1.12 gold equivalent. Well, let's just look at the core of it. What is it running really? So this is what the big companies are looking for. So what we've done is we've gone to our engineering firm and said, okay, do we really need more 0.6? Do we target that? Or what do we need? What's going to be that sweet spot? And they've given us that number. And we've now targeted all the drilling to hit that sweet spot. We're less concerned about lower grades.
So which is?
I can't tell you. That's in intellectual property. If I told you, I'd have to shoot you. But it's just north of a gram here. So if we actually go in that north of a gram, because you get clawed back on recoveries, etc. So you want to be and use this model. And this is what Mr. Eric Sprott and I talked about in the early years when I first met him several years ago. He and I were kind of talking about what can this be? Same question you're asking. Fast forward 3 years later, well, I'm standing by my initial estimate that this will be 1 gram per ton put through. Take an average mine of 100,000 tons a day on a large mine that's a 1 million ounce producer. 10 years.
Right.
If you only had 10 million ounces, you've got a 1 million ounce producer for 10 years.
Okay, but you're saying as it stands right now, if you get your new drilling, the drilling they've done today, your 20 million ounces, does that stack up? Is that what makes you nervous, makes the market nervous? You think that in itself does not stack up? You now know there's a new sweet spot and a new set of targets that you've got to aim for, which may release some value of the previous stuff, and obviously, unlock the value of this kind of these higher grades that you're starting to see. I'm trying to.
Yeah, we're into prime rib if you want to look at it that way. Like, even get away from the buried beef, but we're into the real sweet meat of this thing. So now we're getting to the center of the system. It's like saying to you, you'd be asking me, well, we just put 5 drill holes into a vein deposit. We got really great one, a so-so one, and another one. We're going to put a mine together. Well, that's impossible. You know that. You can't do that. You need to get at least enough consistency of drill holes for that your variogram stands up, and the 100 meter measured is still standing up, and so is that 200 meter drill indicated. And that inferred one is still nebulous. It's out there. So to say that the first part was frivolous is not. It's absolutely important to us. Very important.
But give me that. Explain that.
Yeah,
it's really important that you explain why that's
Let's look at some of the bigger deposits in the world where you see various pits. If you got 3 or 4 pits, and Silver Standard did this, they went off and bought a beautiful deposit in Nevada, and everybody thought they're kind of crazy. But the optimization was when gold prices went up, they could go after the marginal pits that had grades that were possibly not very economic, and that would be economic at the time. So if you have that aspect, if you sidestep material and had material on the side, who knows what the price of gold is going to be in, say, 7 to 10 years? You understand these are 50-year mine plans. These are not 20-year mine plans. These are not 15-year mine plans. So if you've got gold on the periphery, we don't know what that gold will host. It's today's value we assess it at. We assess things, and we put qualifiers on price sensitivity, fuel, labor. We try and project these things forward. However, we are trying to get best as a grade we can to make a world-class deposit. So going forward, if we can maintain 3 thresholds of a world-class deposit, 9 million ounces, say double digits, my goal is to go no less than 10 million ounces of 1 point something grams per ton and go with that. If that includes the core of this, the bony section, which it will, there's some beautiful grades in 57 and 65, wonderful grades, cannot be denied, cannot be ignored.
Okay, I'm starting to see how you're building this in your mind. So what you're going after now, you feel will be the kind of the core of the project. It's enough to get you financed, get you up and running. At some point in the distant future, the work that you've done today will have a value because one expects gold price will be higher and it will be a different economic environment. So it's okay. I understand what's going on in your head, and the reason I say it's worth explaining that is because I'm so intrigued at how institutional guys would look at you. Why aren't they piling into a 20 million ounce project? Because they aren't able to kind of attribute the value that you think it will have. And right now you've got to focus on how do you create value for the next 2-3 years as you build out your 10-year plan. Okay, understood. Get it.
Yeah, so let's think of it as an algorithm. Think of it as an algorithm. Start with your lowest common denominator, your lowest grades, work up. But within the core, within the domains, there are domains within domains, mine within a mine. So if we tighten up, cinch it up, price of gold, say, drops, well, the cutoff becomes even higher and you cut off to the point it shrinks and it's not there anymore. If that happens, it's not there. That comes into feasibility. Right now, we just have to identify the gold that's out there. Then access. Access is on its way. This will be a drive-to project probably in 2 years. Seabridge is currently building the road. They've got it on the way. They think they're going to have it over half the distance of a 25-kilometer stretch by this year. We'll see. So that road is a simple build. The bridge is in already. I mean, they've done a great job of getting the road up to a very difficult part where they had to blast, and they just ripped right through it. So I'm looking forward to actually getting part of a drive-to job so we can eliminate a lot of this helicopter build. We'll never eliminate a helicopter like Brucejack, where they still use helicopters. However, we'll definitely do all the heavy lifting like we have been with our winter road. We just won't have to come in the winter. So we've been very frugal with the money, extremely sensitive to it's got to hit the mark in the form of drill holes.
Okay, so how much money have you raised since like 2019 then?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I haven't kept track of that number. I would be willing to bet around 40 million, just a number, a crude number.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay, we'll look it up. And that would include the recent raise as well, would it?
Yeah, sure. Because you look at it's about $2 an ounce, so 20 million ounces, just a spitball number. There you go, $2 an ounce. Try that anywhere in the world. $20 an ounce is pretty good. If I could say we did it for $2, I'll be pretty proud of that.
Okay. Understand.
In the past, it used to be $1.
Right. You've done a bit of name dropping there. So, what's your background? Because we've not met or spoken before. So.
Oh, I'm a geologist. Yeah.
Right. Where have you worked? What have you done? What
I've basically been a silver standard guy for 19 years with Bob Quartermain, Ken McNaughton, Joe Ofsnick, and did a spin out called Pratium. And the discovery, we were given the Bill Dennis Award and the Spud Hustis Award for our merits of finding a discovery. And this is not the only one we found. We found several in the world as mine finders. I mean, Manantial Espejo was some of the best work I've ever done. Joint venture 50-50 with Ross Beatty's team at Pan American. That was some great structural geology that came up with finding extensions to their Carina Union, the Melissa vein, ironically. A woman I met several years ago and married because I love the name so much. So I gave the name to a vein before I met the wife. There's a funny story, but true story. And then after that, Perquitas, San Luis should be a mine. Piteria was a great discovery. Going forward now, snowfields. We drilled off snowfields in 2006 to 2010, and that has now been purchased and name changed to, I believe they're calling it Mitchell East from Seabridge, but that was with Natalie Sanger, who is then became a resource developed geoscientist with Pratium, who we've pulled back from, used to work for the permitting department at Ministry of Energy and Mines as part of our team. So we're putting the band back together. We're bringing Joe Ofsnick back as our superstar past president of Pratium, superstar explorationist, Ken McNaughton as well. They're on the board of our or the advisors to the board, and we work closely with them along with Stephen Quinn. And with all the support we get from our consulting companies here in Vancouver, I think as the project grows, the team will grow. And we're very careful who we bring in because it's so difficult to find good people to be on the same page as us. And one of my mottos that I have younger kids working with me is when you work with us and our company, it's not a question of if it's a deposit, it's a question of how big. So I believe there's a deposit here. It's just a question of how big. And that's where you get to is optimization. And making a mine is a complete different skill set than discovering one. So that's our wheelhouse. We do the discovery. We'll take as far as we could. And I was one of the few people that said that Pratium will have to build it because people simply didn't understand it. And it took 7 years of production. And finally, or less than 7, what was it? About 5 years of production. And finally someone buys it, right? So, yeah, things don't exactly happen overnight with mergers and acquisitions. Not as quick as you'd like to. However, we're in that position where going forward, we have enough of the low-hanging fruit, the beautiful targets, that we can simply double the value of the project if we're successful in the theory we have of the distribution of deposits in a rhythmic succession that we see in many of the gold camps of the world. Absolutely. And this was predicted. I predicted Goldstorm to be there. I predicted calm before the storm before we even saw it. Calm before the storm was under snow. We couldn't see it until we saw it. It was all because of it's a rhythmic progression of deposits. You start counting 2.5 kilometers, start back at at the Kerr deposit. Go 2.5 kilometers, you'll get the sulfurettes. Go 2.5 kilometers, you get the Mitchell. Then you go 2.5 kilometers, you get the iron cap. But back up to Mitchell, there's a decapitation there. Snowfields, that same decapitation kind of works with us. Go forward 2.5 kilometers, there should be something there. That's called our perfect storm, and we hit 6 holes hit on that target. Then jump forward, you get Copper Bell. Everybody thought it was Copper Bell. Not really. It was. Goldstorm was the elephant in the room. Everybody was working feverishly on the little sideshow. That was the structural component or the shear hosted component that was related to the Goldstorm. However, across the valley, just like juxtaposed to Snowfields to Mitchell, was Eureka. We believe Eureka is the deeper portion of DS5 apexing on the southwest bank as Eureka. So we're going to pogo that back and see if it actually connects. So you're looking at a huge canvas of connecting numbers that nobody saw a connection to, and no one saw the frequency. You can give this to a grade 2 person and say, where would you expect to find the next deposit? And they'll circle it for you. They'll circle it because they've got the ability to look at something without a preconceived notion of geology or alteration where you think, well, it can't be there because of this, this, this. Well, stop thinking like that. Go back macroscopically. It's exactly how Peter Ree was discovered. We looked at deposit, 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 no deposit, deposit. Let's go back and just stake it. Turned out to be 800 million ounces of silver.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm trying to look forward to work out what I'm looking forward to, which is mineral resource update and maybe PEA along the way. You just raised some money. Have you got enough to actually get those two things across the line? Are you considering delaying a PEA till 2023 or beyond, given what you're starting to see now?
That's a great question. That's probably the most important question that we have in front of the board this minute. The answer is, it's funny because in the past, Mr. Sprott told me that don't let the money be an impediment to the advancement of this project. And back then, he meant directly to the drilling. Now, he may actually mean that to go to the PEA. I'm not sure. I haven't actually spoken to him about that. But yes, first things first, get the resource out there. If we see enough in the resource, just like Brucejack Lake, Valley of the Kings, I'm the person who gave it the name, so I know very well how far off that thing was drilled off. And no, the answer is no. We never drilled off that resource. Never one. I was there for 7 years. Incredible. We never finished the resource because it got so deep that we just had to do it from underground. You couldn't get the spacings of holes that tight to be that from the surface. You couldn't do it technically. So likewise, we may get to such a large volume and grade that we could pull that trigger on a PEA that runs into a feasibility sooner than later. It could happen. I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying that let's see what the engineers give to us to what we need to find. So it's like reverse engineering. It's saying, okay, guys, this is great, but you need more ounces in this range. Or this is great, we need to find this. And if that's what they hand us, then we go with it. However, there are several disciplines besides the permitting aspect that we go forward with metallurgy. What's the best approach we take? What about the fact of facilities? Where do we select that? And that's getting to feasibility now. All of this gets to feasibilities.
Right. Okay. And one last question before you go, Ken, which is around metallurgy. Lots of questions around metallurgy. Given the freshness, the newness of the improved grades and the new drilling and what you're going to be allocating new capital towards drilling, do you feel that you need to start looking at the metallurgy sooner to be able to kind of fend off or any of those kind of slight doubts in the market about the metallurgy of what has gone before?
Absolutely. There are two things that'll sink a project. One is metallurgy. The other is tailings site, where you're going to select your tailings facility. These are two enormous dollar items on your list for your plant. So I don't think you can start soon enough because, in some cases, yeah, you can start too soon when you didn't find the true character of the mineralization. And what I mean by that is that DS or that CS 600, that copper stream 600 at depth is changing from a chalcopyrite dominant to chalcopyrite sharing with boronite. All of a sudden, can you imagine designing an entire plant, building everything, and getting into something that wasn't exactly what you had to come out with? It happens. So let's just say one thing. I know what I'm doing this weekend. I'm going up the site, and part of it is selection of composites. It's ongoing, and the big thing is trying to find people available that can run all the composites for you. Because in the past, just laboratories were stacked up. Now we're seeing that getting through the metallurgy aspect, you need a year. You got to reserve a year just to get a good run in for what will be a comfortable fit for what we call a representative sample. There you go. What's a representative? The nice thing is we have extreme consistency. So that's one thing we don't have to worry about. Radical changes, zonation from zinc to silver to other elements. We don't worry about that. We have one solid, consistent core of mineralization that the ratios seem to be apparent. The free gold ratio seems to be coming up. All indicators are looking super positive for us. It's just a matter of execution now. We know what the target is. It's not like we have to bring in people. So where do you think we should look? We know exactly where to look. We put the pads there. We put the pads there at the end of this year. So next year we brush off the deck. We land the drills on the pre-built decks. So everything is set to go. We are well prepared. This is not the first time we've done this up in the Triangle. Extremely well prepared team.
Okay, Ken, appreciate your time today. Lovely to meet you and hear the story at last. I wish I caught it sooner. Stay in touch. Let us know how you get on, okay?
Okay, thanks for having us. Stay in touch. Cheers.